Hello, this is Mark with the Dark United Front Facebook fan page. I'm on the phone with Patrick Glenn, former lead singer of Morbid Saint. Pat, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much for agreeing to come on, man. That means a lot to me. All right, so first thing I wanted to go ahead and ask you was Morbid Saint released 2 albums in the early 1990s, but was active long before the albums were released. Tell me if you can about the metal scenes that were happening in your area of Wisconsin, and if you can, Illinois. I asked because of Numbskull. What was it like being a part of the scene and going to and doing shows at places like the Milwaukee Metal Fest?
Well, where we originated from, Morbid Saints originally from a town called Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And it sounds just like what it is. Sheboygan was a pretty small town, and in the mid-'80s, and kind of mid to late '80s, it was really no scene to speak of at all. I mean, a little later on, when I was in high school, I heard of this band, Morbid Saint, and I was actually a drummer in a different band. And it was tough networking in high school. You find a couple people, a Metallica fan here, an AC/DC fan there, and you just kind of, work with the people that you could find that were kind of on the same boat as you were as far as music. But not until I really heard this band, Morbid Saint, playing, where they were playing like Slayer and stuff, where I really started looking into the heavier side of music. But there was really no scene. You'd have to go find a band that was, figured out how to get some people together and go over to their basement and watch them. And it wasn't until later on, and actually Morbid Saint opened up for a band that I was playing drums in. I was really a drummer.
Yeah.
So at a speakeasy, and really there was no scene until a little later on when Morbid Saint got a little more popular, and then the bands, and I actually got into the band. Then they asked me to join right before they recorded Spectrum of Death, and then things really started to happen kind of quickly. We met up with they did a show with Realm, which is a band from Milwaukee, and started networking with some of those bands and Acrofest, and that's when we kind of got to meet the Numbskulls and Dr. Shrinkers and Mortis Skulls and those type of bands. And then things kind of expanded a little more quickly, and there was an actual scene that was kind of developing, not only in Milwaukee with these bands, but also in the Sheboygan area. The scene was really starting to take hold, and a lot of younger bands started forming their own little metal acts and stuff. So that's kind of what the flavor of the scene was back then. And it was a great, with Milwaukee Metal Fest, we never really got down to Illinois to play shows that much. We were really pretty much a Wisconsin type act, playing bowling alleys, and so the Milwaukee Metal Fest was really a big deal for us.
Yeah.
As well as some of the opportunities to play with some of those bands like Realm and Acrofest, and then when Death and Dark Angel came in on their Ultimate Revenge tour, we got to an opening spot with them to support them. So
Nice.
those were kind of not the norm. They were special treats that we got to do. But that was kind of the flavor of the scene back then.
Wow, that's really cool. One of the reasons I feel both Morbid Saint albums are so strong are because of your vocals. They remind me a lot of the cross between Don Doty of Dark Angel and Millie Petroza of Creator. Were those two influences, or were those two guys' influences on your style? And if you can, name some other influences that helped mold your style.
Well, I'm sure in certain ways they were influences on my style. Like I kind of mentioned in the first question, I was really a drummer and drumming in bands up until Morbid Saint really quite abruptly fired their singer that they had from Milwaukee, and they had studio time to record Spectrum of Death already scheduled. So they asked me to come in and try out and sing with them. And really, with the band I was playing drums in, we could never find a singer. They were always the hardest to find. So,
Yeah.
I sang some of the Metallica songs and some of the Metal Church and some of that stuff. And so I tried out for Morbid Saint, and the really, Jay Fisher, who was in Morbid Saint, I kind of knew him beforehand from some of those shows we'd hang out by his van down by the lake drinking beer and whatnot. So I'd listen to him, and he'd be playing Possessed and Dark Angel and, you know, Death, and be playing a lot of these Creator and Sherman bands.
Yeah.
And so when I first tried out, they told me, you know, we kind of like your style, but it just sounds evil. That was just sound as evil as you can.
Yeah.
And then I kind of thought back to what what they're always jamming down at the lake when we're drinking. So I kind of had a flavor of what they really wanted.
Yeah.
And so I just really went as evil as I could, and kind of, you know, went into that more extreme style instead of, you know, like the Metallica type.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you, man. As soon as I heard you guys, and I'll have to admit, I had not heard you guys until recently. I was going through YouTube trying to find bands, and I came across Morbid Saint, and that was the very first thing that really stuck out in my mind, was just how rabid and vicious the vocals sounded, and how they just really took the music to another level. I mean, it really, you know, made it really stand out, man. So I mean, I gotta hand to you, man, some of the best thrash metal vocals I have ever heard.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate that.
Hey, man. Hey, I'm just speaking the truth from my heart, man. This is kind of a question that I actually asked Rob Urbanati from Sacrifice a few days ago, but I think it kind of applies to Morbid Saint as well, since both Sacrifice and Morbid Saint got to open up for Death. But Morbid Saint at one point opened up for Death. What do you remember about that tour, and in particular about Chuck Schuldiner?
Well, I believe that on the Ultimate Revenge, we opened a slot with them, and quite honestly, that night, I don't remember much. I was doing some heavy drinking. But
yeah.
I do remember kind of at one point getting kind of backstage, or not back, kind of on the side of where Gene Hoglan was playing his drums.
Uh-huh.
I thought the whole stage was going to come down. It was kind of a pieced together stage, and he was just destroying these drums, and you know, he was such a big guy, and his drum set looked, you know, like tiny.
Yeah.
He was playing with smaller kind of kit, and so that's the one thing that stood out in my mind. But I never got to talk to Chuck. I know Jay and Jim and our guitar players in our band sat down and had discussions and everything that I've heard them speak of him, that he was just, you know, a very gracious, sweet guy, and you know, obviously very knowledgeable about what was going on in the scene. And I'm sure for our guitar players, it was you know, a great kind of mind to pick at the time, or somebody that they got to meet. But unfortunately for myself, yeah, I didn't really remember much about that night, except watching Gene play the drums. And then we had on the Milwaukee Metal Fest with Death and a lot of some other big bands too, Autopsy and
yeah, Chris Ryford's band.
Yeah, and I just sat back and was really mostly just a fan, and tried to, you know, just pick up on nuances that they do, because really I didn't know anything about being a front man, or, you know, really just kind of putting my feet into this really extreme type of metal.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of learning on the fly and drinking heavily while I was doing it.
Hey, man, well, the results came out loud and clear, man. Like I said, man, some of the best vocals I ever heard for thrash metal.
Awesome. I really do appreciate that.
Hey, man. Hey, like I said, I'm just speaking the truth as far as the way I see it, man. I'm of the opinion, and this, like I said, is kind of something that I directed towards Rob from Sacrifice a few days ago, but I see some similarities between the two bands. But I'm of the opinion, excuse me, I'm of the opinion that Morbid Saint, along with Sacrifice, could have very well crossed over into the death metal field had both bands not broken up when they did. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it could have. I mean, Morbid Saint really wrote music not to fit into a genre, but basically just to, you know, just do what we like to do and have fun doing it. A lot of the songwriting was collaboration. I mean, a lot of it was done with Jim Fragatis and Lee Reynolds, you know, pounding out, you know, major structures of the song, but everybody was invited to, you know, put their flavors into the song and really kind of make out what it was. Like Tony Coletti was a big Merciful Fate and bass player, he used the finger tap, or don't hear a lot of that, but he was like that style, and the guitar players were, a lot of Slayer kind of sounding style, and
yeah,
the people said I was kind of like in the German kind of sounding style with my vocals. So it all came together as, what they would call death thrash. And I don't know, back then it was just thrash, and even back then they didn't even know what the hell we were doing. They took us on shows with punk bands and all different things. So, if it was something that we were trying to do, we could have went into more death metal. I'm not even really sure. We didn't really consider genres then, just let them call us what they will. We'll just keep making music.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, I think back to that time, and I think, compared to today's scene and everything, that time, it's exactly like you said, everybody was just kind of trying to figure it out. I think it, compared to the time now, I would still rather have it done that way. Put out good music, not really know what's really going on with it, but put out good music instead of, everything's really categorized and, extremely edited and all that type of stuff and everything. I think we came from a much better time back then,
Yeah, I think if you're if you start out by categorizing what you want to do, I think you're limiting yourself right off the bat to what you're allowing yourself to be open to doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then bands like what is it, Morbid Angel, who had that one album, the experimental album. I don't know what they were doing, but I know they got a lot of backlash for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all in the name of being creative. I mean, if it flops, it flops. Sometimes you got to jump off the ledge and see what happens if that's what you're feeling.
Yep, a leap of faith. Yeah. Let's see. Destruction System was listed as a demo for many years. What's the story behind that, and does it tie into the band breaking up in 1994?
No, it doesn't really tie into the breakup at all. And Destruction System was and always was supposed to be our second full-length album, and it is as much a full-length as 33, 34 minutes, Spectrum of Death is.
Yeah.
But the deal with that is when we went into the studio, and I think at that time we were on a label called Grindcore.
Yeah.
And what Grindcore was nice enough to do was set us up with some cash to go in and record the album. And so we went in and we did like our first kind of basic tracking of the album. And then there was some money problems where there wasn't enough to continue. So what we did is we made this demo tape, the black tape, and recorded 4 songs that were going to be on that Destruction System album. Made a demo tape, and we're trying to sell some of that to garner some money to go back in and finish the album.
Yeah.
By the time we had, the money saved up, we're going, all right, let's go back in and finish this album. The studio was closed. I don't think Grindcore might have been out of business by then. The studio was out, and apparently the studio, I don't know if the bank seized the building and the assets and all the tapes were gone. So we really had nothing from Destruction System except what we took home after that first weekend with the basic tracking and some of the very raw stuff. And and that was something that I was really disappointed in, because that's really where I had a lot more influence. Because in Spectrum of Death, I was really in Morbid Saint for maybe about a month before I had to go in and record that in the studio, which was kind of mind-blowing to me at the time. But Spectrum of Death, I actually have some songwriting and lyrical credits and some of that on there. So it was a little more personal of the album to me.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of pushing to re-record it or do what we could with it, and it finally kind of got out there on a Celtic release, which was kind of official, unofficial, and now it's out on the Century Media release, and I'm glad it got out there. But it was always supposed to be a full-length album, but you could never really call it that because just of the real shitty quality of it.
Oh man, well, I'll tell you, man. I went out and searched out both Spectrum of Death and Destruction System. I had to look high and low, but I finally found copies that I were able to find on eBay for like $30 and maybe a little bit over that each for both copy. And then as soon as I bought Destruction System a week later, I think you said Century Media came out and said, "Yeah, we're re-releasing everything," and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I could.
Century Media release, there's actually even some tracks that aren't even on either of those albums.
Oh, really?
It's like the very first song that Morbid Saint wrote, way before I was even in the band. It's a song called Thrashaholic.
Mm-hmm.
That's on there, and that was actually what they named kind of a self-release 3-disc set that they did with a live DVD.
Oh, nice.
And then there's like Life's Blood, I think, and there's a couple other, like 4 other tracks on there that aren't on either of the Destruction System or Spectrum of Death. So, if you have that Century Media release, you got them.
Oh man, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to order those, man. I mean, both those albums are. I mean, I can't believe they're criminally underrated.
Well, that's all right with me. Things work out the way they do for a reason, and whether it be the breakup in '94, and really, people were kind of getting on with their lives. The thrash scene was dying. There were fewer shows in between. We were never really making money at it.
Yeah.
So, people started, just getting on with their careers and stuff. It was nothing really where, we were at each other's throats or pissed off or,
Yeah.
It was just, it just kind of ran its course, it seemed at the time. And, I wanted to keep it going, but, it just wasn't feasible at the time.
Yeah, and as a lot of people know in the music industry, man, it's a great industry, but you still got to be able to eat and, make money and do that type of stuff. And so, when that type of thing happens, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place,
Well, it's an easier decision if you're, just living for yourself, if you're not really looking to, start a family or get into a career or pursue stuff like that, because, like you say, being a musician, if you want to make it your life, it's constant working, touring, getting some breaks here, maybe not getting a break, working odd jobs. It's a rough way to, framework a whole life.
Yeah.
But it's, kudos to the people that do it and do it, with all the heart and not the deep pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when Morbid Saint reunited and started playing shows again, one of the places you played out of all places was China. How did that come to be, and what was the experience like?
Oh, the experience was amazing. Absolutely amazing. We had, I think it was like 7 shows that we got to do in China. It was from one end of China to the other, a 30-hour train ride on a packed-in cattle car, the holes in the ground toilets, just the worst experience you can imagine of a train ride.
Yeah.
A 200-mile-an-hour luxury bullet train, and, festivals, this Orange Island Music Festival with, 10,000 plus people you got to perform for, and, and then again, the little club shows. So it ran the gamut of, just mind-blowing, architecture and huge stages to, really down the seedy, inner belly of China and seeing some of that. So it was really quite the experience, and how it came about was it was all set up through Mort Productions, and I think earlier on, Morbid Saint was contacted by Mort Productions because they wanted to re-release Spectrum of Death, and it's amazing how many people and calls you get, people that want to re-release this Spectrum of Death.
Oh yeah.
And re-released, a dozen times, some, or who knows how many times.
Yeah.
We were like, no, we're under contract. I think with Relapse, it was at the time, and we can't really do this. And can we do Destruction System? Can we re-record? It was like, no, we can't really do anything like that. I can't get it. So then I think what they came up with was, if we can get Morbid Saint over here to China, would you be willing to do a live recording that we could release? So I think I think if we would have let them re-release Spectrum of Death, we would have never actually got the trip to China.
Wow.
But we went over to China, and it was the very first show in Beijing where they had recorded the show, and then they, pressed the CD, and there's actually a China import from that show. And, after a ungodly flight and some travels to get to that first show, it wasn't the best one to have recorded, that's for sure. But you can't always, control the end product, and we got an awesome experience out of it, experience of a lifetime. I doubt that I'll ever go back to China, just on a vacation.
Yeah. Had China always been somewhere that you'd always wanted to visit?
Well, I love traveling, and the crazier the place, the better, and I never really thought, when we got back together, I thought Europe was a very solid possibility, because of, how much support they have with the kind of extreme music scenes there.
Absolutely.
I thought that was the possibility of being signed originally to Avenzon and Metallica. I thought, Mexico, South America was a real possibility. But never in my wildest dreams was I thinking, wow, there's a lot of metalheads in China. Maybe we can go to China.
Yeah.
So, it was a surprise, and like I said, the stranger the place, the better, I love going to places like that. And obviously, you need a nice guide through the area, an interpreter, and we had an awesome one in Alexa, and just a great experience overall, and yeah.
That's
probably one of the highlights of my experience with Morbid Saint was that China trip.
That's awesome, man. I feel the same way about traveling. I finally was able to get over to Europe about 3 years ago, man, and honestly, probably the best experience of my life. I now get what people say when they say, if you do one thing in life, travel. I finally get that now, and I had always had it. I'd always understood the appreciation for art and architecture and things like that. But it wasn't until I actually got over into Hungary and Germany and Austria where I was like, oh, I get it now. Now I get why people are into art and architecture and that type of stuff. I mean, it was really a very cool, eye-opening experience. Hopefully someday I'll be able to get over to Asia and, South America as well. But I totally understand what you're saying about traveling. Really quickly, what were the fans like over there?
They were good. I mean, they were. I wish I could remember the name of this one band. I can't. It's like Explosivo, or that's a Jack Black song, I think. But there were some really good thrash bands. One of the festivals we played was a multi-genre festival, and they ran the gamut of all different styles of music, and a lot of it sounded westernized. A lot of it sounded like it was more traditional type of kind of music. But, yeah, it's some very music's a big thing to these people because I think a lot of what they get to experience is very limited and structured through the government of what you can say and what how things are conducted.
Yeah.
So when there's an open time where everybody can come together at a music festival or come together and celebrate music and freedom of expression, the people are all over it and very gracious and accepting of everybody's differences, and to see that different genres of music in a festival, and everybody just happy to enjoy every other band and to see what was going on is pretty refreshing.
Yeah, it is, man. I totally agree. When I had reached out to you earlier, you informed me that you had left Morbid Saint back at the beginning of this year. If you don't mind sharing, what happened that caused this?
Well, there were a lot of things that happened, but really, I guess to break it down in its simplest form is, you got to have good communication when you're in a band. It's a lot of different personalities working, as one to create kind of one project, and really the communication just broke down to really where there really was no more line of constructive communication going on, and from a band that I was involved in every aspect of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really every aspect of, to, at the end where I wasn't even, trusted with the key code to get into the practice room, and passwords were changed on Morbid Saint emails, and not available to kicked off as administrator of the Facebook. It was like, they weren't happy with me. I moved to Chicago. I wasn't making as many practices anymore. They were probably unhappy with some of the things I was writing, and it was just kind of the writing was on the wall, and it was just time to go.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I'll say this, man. Their loss.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they're still active and at it, so we'll see what the new Morbid Saint has to offer. But
it's an uphill battle for them, man. Without your vocals.
I really, and I told them this when I was. I said, I really can't go on like this, and I don't really want to quit. If we can, hit the reset button, go back to when things were, working the way they were supposed to. I'd be willing to do that. And then when I really didn't get any response from that, it was, I just knew it was, it can't go on this way. So
Yeah.
It was a tough decision, and I miss it, but there's more to life out there. It's no use, beating your head against the rock that's, never going to move.
Yeah, you're exactly right, man. Well, what is the current state of Pat Lynn's music activity, and is Sergeant Discharge still active?
Sergeant Discharge. Well, after I left Morbid Saint, a little shortly after that, Randy Wall, who was drumming with Morbid Saint, also left, and he was the drummer in Sergeant Discharge, and he and some of the other guys in Sergeant Discharge was like, well, Pat and Randy are available now, and he kind of threw it out. We started talking on Facebook, and they're great guys. I love them, and I thought, yeah, well, that's cool. Maybe we can get together, no expectations, just kind of hang out, drink some beers, and jam a little bit. But still, this is also up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is about even a half an hour north of Sheboygan. So instead of a 2.5-hour drive, now it's a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
But I would go up there from Chicago, and we hung out and drank and played some songs, and things kind of fell back into a pretty cool vibe.
Yeah, you were having fun again.
Yeah. So, but it's really just logistically unfeasible to really make it a full-time thing. So I told him I'd be willing to do a couple of reunion shows, because we kind of had a pretty decent following up in the Sheboygan and Manitowoc area, and I love playing with the guys, so I thought it'd be fun to, I said I could commit to a reunion show here or there, up in that area for, some of those bands that really supported us back in the Sergeant Discharge days for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to metal, are there any new bands that have caught your attention to make you say, these guys do it the right way and have the right attitude?
Well, I mean, there's a few bands that, mostly the bands that caught my attention were bands that we got to share stages with after we got back. And to those people, that I've talked to, there's bands like Warbringer and Toxic Holocaust that I enjoy those bands, and it seems like they're doing it the right way, but I really don't know the guys, so,
yeah,
it'd be, who knows how they're doing it, but I know that they're constantly touring. That's a big part of doing it the right way.
Yeah.
So, they're dedicated people that are, constantly on the road and doing things like that. But a lot of the younger bands that we jammed with, especially, we got to play with this band, Condition Critical, quite a few times. And, they're very cool guys, very dedicated. Also bands like Lich King, there was Speedwolf. I don't know how new they are, but they were new to me, Speedwolf. And we did a couple of shows, finally got out to California. There was a band, Madros out there. A bunch of them, Noisium on the East Coast, Seeds of Perdition, Satatonic Desire. These are bands that, opened up for us, so they're not, household names, but they're great guys and really talented musicians.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. I'll go ahead and offer up a recommendation if you don't mind. I would definitely check out Dust Bolt from Germany and Suicidal Angels from Greece.
Dust Bolt.
Yeah, they're from Essen, Germany.
Yeah, I've heard the name Suicidal Angels. I'm kind of stuck like in my old ways and listening to all the stuff that I know I love.
I know what you mean.
I should be more adventurous in my in the music I listen to, but I like some of the old classics that I love when it comes to metal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to new bands, I really stand there with my arms crossed, and I'm like, show me something. Yeah, still haven't heard it. You got to show me. You got to really show me something because, quite honestly, I mean, I know that a lot of new bands, their heart's in it. It's just I just don't think it really stands out as much as it did back when we were growing up and everything. But then again, it's like, guys who say, LeBron James will never be as good as Michael Jordan. Well, I think that's fact, but, I mean, it's kind of like, to younger kids, they're like, what are you talking about? But, for the kids who grew up in that era, it's like, no, it's, Michael Jordan is the king. There will never be anything better than that, so I kind of compare it to that,
Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks. Last question. Describe the difference, if you can, between today's metal bands and the metalheads from when you and I were growing up almost 2 generations ago.
Oh, that's kind of a tough one. I think really the metalheads and the metal fans today, the heart of the metal fan is very similar to what it was in the old days. It's the world that's changed around them that makes them seem different. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are people that really, in their heart, love this extreme type of music. They like it for the same reason, I did when I was young.
Yeah.
For the release, the anger, the aggression, it just does something to you. I mean, there's a certain reason people become metalheads because, it flips a switch in them. It gives them something that they're not getting anywhere else. Yeah. And I think that's true today with the metal fans as it was back then. On the other hand, it's, the technology now. I mean, as years go on, everybody's got their phone. Everybody's dialed into something, taking a video, snapping selfies, taking pictures, dialing up, who's this new bass player? I didn't know. Well, I'm not going to go talk to people and find out who this new bass player is. I'll just Google it. Yeah. So in that way, it's changed a great deal. But I'd like to believe that the real, true heart of the metal fan has not changed that much. And from the people that I've seen and how they put themselves at the shows that we've played since I've been back, I find it to be true. They're dedicated, aggressive. I mean, they're all about the metal, but they're still, cool enough that they don't have these fucking attitudes and stuff like that. You still see people pick them up off the floor in the mosh pit and stuff. People still catch them when you stage dive. Obviously, you're always going to have your assholes, but we had them back in the day too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I kind of equated back to when we were coming up and the thrash bands and the extreme metal that we were listening to, and how guys who grew up on Sabbath and Zeppelin and Purple and UFO and Thin Lizzy and bands like that, they were probably looking at us going, what the hell are they doing? I mean, this makes no sense. So as much as I kind of not look down, but I kind of stand there with my arms crossed when newer bands come out and everything, I got to think back, and it's like, well, we were kind of thought of the same way, to the older guys, back when we were coming up,
Yeah, I don't know what it is what it's even called, like some of this new, like where they really flail their arms around and do this weird stomping, and I don't know if that's the like new metal or what the hell they're doing, but it looks really strange to me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see videos of guys in the pit these days, and it's like there's no circle. It's It's everything but the kitchen sink, but there's no flowing of a circle or anything like that. It's like, wow, I wish these guys could go back, in time and see, how we did it. But then again, that's the old curmudgeon in me just coming out,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what looked silly back in the old days, us running around in circles and mashing against each other, now looks silly to us with their hands alone flailing their arms with nobody around them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Pat, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to go ahead and do this for me, man. Like I said, I'm kind of a newer fan to Morbid Saint. Like I said, I found you guys on YouTube, but since then, man, I mean, anytime I meet somebody who's into thrash metal, especially the old stuff, you guys are definitely like the first band that I mention,
Well, I appreciate that, and that's one thing about never really kind of making it mainstream or big or even semi well known is that people keep discovering us on a regular basis, or not us, or Morbid Saint, I should say, and Morbid Saint throughout the history of the band has had some of the most dedicated and rabid fans, and I appreciate all the Morbid Saint fans. I appreciate you hitting me up for this interview and talking to me about some of these things, and it's been a pleasure, Mark.
No, hey man, the pleasure's all mine, man. I mean, like I said, I'm just a fan. I'm trying to cut my teeth in the heavy metal journalism field, and for you to go ahead and take the time to do this, man, it really, it really does mean so much to me, man. And thank you, for flying the metal flag and everything. Even though you're not really active right now, I know your heart's still in it and everything. And we need more guys out there in the scene like you, man.
All right. Well, I thank you again, Mark, and best of luck to you in your future with your metal journalism.
Hey, thanks, man. And congratulations on getting married last year. It's really cool, man.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, you take care, man, and hopefully someday our paths will cross, man.
That'd be cool. I'll buy the first round.
Well, I'll buy a few rounds after that, man, and it will be a good time, man.
All right, cool.
All right, hey, man, take.
I'll hit you up.
All right, man. Hey, take care, man, and best of luck to you, man, and much more continued success, whatever you're doing.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right, thanks, Pat. You take care, bro.
All right.
Later.